Hello everybody, I'm back with another video for you today, and we have even more reveals. We're nearly at the end now, but there's probably a couple more videos that I'll make, just analysing cards and whatnot, and saying which ones can be good and bad. Got some pretty interesting ones again, a couple more legendary beasts for, a couple of factions, as well as some cards which synergize with those, and, all sorts of other things. So let's just jump right in. Start off with Succubus, 4 for 5 for monsters. Very interesting card, it's a beast. Death Wish, at the end of your turn, summon a different copy of Succubus from your graveyard to a random row and give it Doomed. And if you have Adrenaline 3, you don't give it Doomed. So the idea behind this card is you play one Succubus early, it doesn't do anything, it's like a carryover play, and then you play another one later in the game, and you can eat the Succubus and get another one back, and if you have Adrenaline 3, so late in the round, you can eat it and continually eat it as you would a Ruin kind of card. And you can get quite a few points per turn from your consumes, 4 points per turn, right? Very cool effect. However, I don't think this is very good at all. I think this is way too conditional to set up. You have to play one earlier in the game, and then you get 3-4 turns of consuming it. That's not even that crazy, I think. You can compare this to maybe Ciliano Harpy. It's kind of a similar concept, but more conditional than the Harpy, and arguably, it's probably better than the Harpy when it does work, but it's just very hard to get off, I think. It's like a bonded effect. But yeah, I suppose it could work. In some way, it's nice that you can play one earlier, in a round 1 or something, and then the next one does become active. So I kind of see it, but at the same time, I think it might be a bit too clunky to see proper play. But I could be wrong about that. And yeah, if you have a lot of consumes, you definitely get a lot of value from that second play if you've done the first one in like a round 1 where you don't care about points. But yeah, it's an interesting card, interesting design. That's what I got to say about that. Next we have Griffin. This is a very cool card for Northern Realms. 5 for 10, so pretty terrible stats, and it is a beast. At the end of the round, shuffle this card back to your deck, keeping its boosts. Wow, okay, that's kind of a crazy effect, right? Yeah. Think of all the things you can possibly do with this, right? Pincer Maneuver, shielding it up with Shield Wall, just using Royal Guards or other boosting cards, put it next to a Drummer, an Anna, Corvo, Visigota of Corvo. There's a lot of synergies here, of course, with Northern Realms. The one thing is, it is a 5 for 10. It is very vulnerable to things like Heatwave. That's going to be the main card. I think the main card of the expansion will be Heatwave. Heatwave's going to be so auto-include still, which may be a good thing, maybe not a good thing, I don't know, depends how you look at it, but I think going all in on Griffin might be a bit difficult because of that, and as a result, if you can't go all in on this card, I'm not sure it's too great, because how big can you realistically get it? They can also damage it down, stop the boosts from, being applied to it. I think ultimately this card is doomed to not be very competitive, but like kind of a meme card that can be very powerful if the opponent doesn't interact too much with you or doesn't run the Heatwave, for example. And you can get this past their defenses and, smash their side of the board with all those points. But it's a very cool design, just a shame that, yeah, I feel like it will be a bit oppressed by Heatwave predominantly. But I'll definitely try it out, there's no doubt about that. Going to play All God and Pincer Maneuver and just, everything. All the buffs on this card. And try to recycle it and play it for billions of points. I think it's kind of like a V in Monsters, but quite a bit worse, effectively. And yeah, I think it's probably not going to be too strong. Next we have Witcher Adept. This is a 3 for 4 scoia'tel card. Deploy melee. Give an enemy unit bleeding with duration equal to number of units on that unit's row. Deploy ranged, give an allied unit vitality with duration equal to number of units on that unit's row. So, there's potential here to get quite a few points. The problem with this card is bleeding and vitality you're supposed to be doing early in a round. You're supposed to get your bleeding down or your vitality down early on so that it can tick every round, and need to be several cards being played in order to get the value there. Problem is, you want to play this late in a round because that's when there's going to be a lot of units on a row. So yeah, I don't see this card being very good. It's kind of very hard to set up. Doesn't really... it just kind of has anti-synergy with itself, you know what I mean? It's counterintuitive how it works, and I think it will be very hard to find value from this, especially in a 4P card. Like, you probably want to play this early in the game in round 1 rather than saving it later. It's just very awkward. Like, when do you play this? It's kind of like a fence in Syndicate. Like, on paper it might be quite good points-wise, but in reality actually getting the points is a bit of a hassle sometimes. So I think this card won't be very good. It's a Witcher, but yeah, kind of not expecting much from this one. Next we have Dire Bear, Skellige card. Pretty scary Skellige card at that. Legendary beast. 8 for 9, so not the best, but decent numbers. And units in this and the opposite row can't be boosted. What on earth? That's a crazy effect, right? It's kind of like a reverse Cahir. You basically, it is a Cahir effectively. If they boost from that row, doesn't really count. Same as Cahir. So probably better than Cahir because on that row at least, Cahir, obviously doesn't care which row the opponent plays on. He is melee restricted though, and Dire Bear isn't. So there's, it's not objectively a stronger effect for Cahir, I would say. But yeah, basically you can't tool remove this after the boosts have been negated. It's just sitting there. You're not getting any of your boost value until you deal with this thing, which is a pretty nasty effect. Like, yeah, the one thing is obviously they can play in a different row, or they can move this, and maybe that negates a little bit the value that the Dire Bear can get. But really, how many points do you even need to deny for this to be worth it? Like 3 or 4 probably. I think denying 3 or 4 boosts is probably very possible. You can consider this like maybe a card that can just remove a few engines from certain factions which are focused on boosting. Might even be able to really heavily shut down something like scoia'tel just by if they're playing for a big legendary cat witcher row where they're going to play a lot of those guys that boost, maybe a cat witcher mentor as well. Just play this opposite the row which has a lot of units in, and you're going to shut that down pretty much. And well, potentially maybe with some counterplay. Likewise with Northern Realms and all the boosting engines, just if they're starting to set that up, well, just play Dire Bear. I guess they can then probably remove it. So it's not like invincible, but it might be a nice little engine sort of counter card to throw in Skellige. I could see this being played in a deck with like Succubus and Arnagad and Defender, and you just kind of put everything behind Defender, deny the opponent's stuff while, smashing their final few plays. I could kind of see that working. That would probably be where you play this. Otherwise, it doesn't have a huge amount of synergy, so it might not just be thrown in any old deck, right? But it's an interesting one despite that. Next we got Sabre-tooth Tiger. This is a very interesting card for scoia'tel. 7 strength, 9 provisions, beast, zeal, order, transform self into Sabre-tooth Tiger stealth. And Sabre-tooth Tiger stealth is an artifact effectively. At the start of your turn, damage all enemy units that are alone on their row by 2 and transform self back into the Sabre-tooth Tiger. So, ooh, what a weird card, right? Basically it's invulnerable. Kind of fits with the idea of the card, right? It's like lurking in the shadows. You're not really going to get to fight with it head on, and it's just going to kind of jab you from a distance, take out your units if they're alone. Obviously, some nice movement synergy if you're able to move stuff such that it's not on the same row, or if you're able to punish their row stacking, maybe with some big movement synergy, like the Gezras, for example, something like that, or just typical crushing trap row punish. Then you can kind of get the value that this would otherwise get, because they're going to be playing into one row in order to avoid the Sabre-tooth Tiger. Yeah. It's kind of hard to predict how much value this gets. I think it's quite a strong card, but it is at the start of your turn, so they can play around it a little bit, Yeah. you can imagine playing this first card. That's probably going to be a nice play. If you have first say in the round, go with the Sabre-tooth Tiger, transform it. They're going to have to play a unit into it probably, right? So you've already then got your 9 points of value, and then it becomes an engine that just gets you 2 points, maybe even 4 points per turn in theory. Particularly, I mean, you could even think about no unit decks and removing their units in order to generate these extra points, right? So when they play a unit, it gets damaged, you then kill it, then they play another one, and then they have to again play into the damage. So I can see that being quite powerful, and that's, of course, it counts as a unit in your no unit deck, and it gets you 7 points at the end of the round. So for no unit decks, this card is nuts. But yeah, in movement, I could see it if you're going first play in round 3, you play this, and then it's kind of like an engine that gets its value by forcing the opponent to row stack, kind of. I mean, it's not that simple because they can just play like in 2 rows, right? But have like 2 units in each row. I don't know. I think the value is probably there, but I'm not. You might consider other cards over this in movement. Maybe not. It's kind of a hard one. But I think it is quite good, yeah. Alright, next we've got Viper Witcher Alchemist. 5 for 5 Nilfgaard card. Deploy, look at top 3 cards of your deck, put 1 on the top, then swap top card of your opponent's deck with yours. Is this card any good? Oh man, this is like an Aetheri Merchant, but just way overboard. Like, Nilfgaard is really becoming just like the mega meme faction, I think, with this expansion. I don't even know if this will be good, man. It's definitely spicy, right? You can play the couriers, you can put their good cards on top of their deck, you can put your bad cards on top of your deck, you can swap the decks around, you can steal their stuff. You're going to be the one playing, you know, playing with their good cards in theory. I think these kind of decks are not ever going to be like super great because they're basically reliant on your opponent's deck to get their value in some way, right? And any deck that's reliant on what the opponent is playing in order to have a deck, kind of not going to work too well, I think. You know, just having their cards rather than your own generally means their cards aren't going to synergize very well with your stuff, so I don't know. I'm not sure I see this kind of an archetype being super competitive, but this is just probably quite a bit better than a Aetheri Merchant, right? So it's support for that. Like, imagine if they changed spotters, right? If they changed spotters, for example, then this card could be very nice in like a Spotter Tibor deck. If they made Spotter target the top unit of the opponent's deck for the reveal, then you could do like a Spotter hand buff kind of style of deck. But I think without that, this kind of gameplay is just very inconsistent and just, yeah, like whatever. I'm taking your win condition. I hope it's good for me. It maybe isn't because it has synergy with your deck, not mine, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Finally, we have Griffin Witcher Ranger, 2 for 5 Northern Realms card. Deploy, boost self by 1 for every unit on the opposite row. Order, transfer all boosts from self to an allied unit. It's an interesting one, isn't it? So I guess the obvious synergy here is with the big Griffin for Northern Realms. What was it? The Arch Griffin that we revealed. Well, not revealed, but talked about already. So you can throw a bunch of boosts on this guy, you can play him, you know, when there's a couple of units on the other row, you can then boost him with Royal Guards or whatever engine you have, and then you can immediately play the Griffin and boost it such that you get that value secured in some way. But again, I think, you know, they can then just damage the Griffin. I guess you can save it as a play, you can wait until they pass, but then again, you're not... Are you really getting the value then from that card? I don't know. I don't think this card's particularly good because it takes a long time for you to get the value from that deploy effect. You're going to have to wait like 5 or 6 turns for this even to be looking remotely playable, and probably it's only going to be like 7, 8 strength after like 7 or so cards, right? Northern Realms doesn't really have much movement, you know, to set this up, and I mean, the one thing you can consider is probably scoia'tel will be row stacking a lot. Maybe other factions will do that. Not sure. Maybe you could try to play this with like Siege and Trebuchet and try to force them into run row. I just think it's like very clunky and not getting the value, and then that order effect is kind of only good with Arch Griffin, which I don't think is going to be very good. And yeah, I just think it's not too great. It can be transformed with the Griffin Witcher Adept. So the target for that in theory, but it's not a very good one. Yeah, I don't see it, guys. I don't see it being very good. I don't see just the Witcher package in Northern Realms in general being very good. I think those cards are not really super great. I think Cohen will be good, and Erlak, but apart from that, I think it's a bit underwhelming for them. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that. I brought the red turtleneck back due to public demand on the last time. But yeah, thanks all for watching, guys. Subscribe for more of this content and for the decks. Oh, we're so close. I can't wait. Every day I want that expansion, man. I want the Cyberpunk after that. I'm ready, but it feels like a real dead time until then, right? It's like the calm before the storm. Before the good storm, as it were. Anyway, have a good one, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.